I want to talk about just like what learning really looks like. So a couple of you guys, like when we throw in pens, there are I just want us to kind of set the expectation of what it means to learn and to get better. So let me just get this bad boy here. All right. So I think what we need to understand is, and this is just like a YouTube clip of people that throw 100. All right. But all of this is a skill. And so we just need to understand that like this can be learned. Now, obviously, I don't know if everyone can throw 100. I think everyone can get to into the 80s. I think a lot of people can get into 90. Throwing 100 just takes a pretty special athlete. But the point I'm trying to make here is throwing is a skill, and to be good at a skill, it takes just like certain characteristics and certain qualities, and it takes a certain amount of effort and practice, right? So, um, what I want to talk about tonight is just like what that practice needs to look like. So, what does the training environment need to look like for us to excel on the mound, right? We're all here because we want to be good on the mound. And so, what does our training environment need to look like? As we're training with me, training on our own, training with our high school teams, what kind of culture and what kind of where do we need to be, or what kind of training environment do we need so that way we can learn a skill best. Okay, so the first thing I think we all need to understand is something like this. Okay, can anyone tell me kind of what this picture is showing? Ready, you're drawing all over it. Who can unmute themselves and just tell me what is this showing?
The dude fell a bunch of times and then landed it once.
Right. So all of these things, like we see this, right? We see those guys throwing 100, anything really. The guys that are playing football right now, like we see this, we don't see this, right? And even on social media, okay, you see guys that are like hitting PRs and maybe they like are all fired up because they're throwing 90, right? You don't see this. You don't see like all those times when they were stuck at 87 and they couldn't figure it out, when they're stuck at 82 and they can't figure it out, right? Or you see like someone just breaking off a nasty curveball, and you don't see the ones that are flat and the ones that are ugly and the ones when they're trying to figure it out. And so I think a lot of us need to understand that you have to go through this at some point. Okay, you got to grind it like in the dark when no one's watching. You got to fail a bunch of times in order to be this guy that actually lands it. And so if you are struggling, right, if you're having a pen that's not going great, or if there's like some sort of new drill or concept that we're working on and it's just not going well, or we're learning a new pitch and it's not going well, just understand that like this guy, the guy landing the trick is still ahead of you, right? And you might just be in this part right now. But then it's once you get to here, it's going to be sweet. And so just understand that it's not always going to be that it's not going to be perfect all the time, and you have to go through struggle in order for it to get to perfect, if that makes sense. Um, and that kind of brings me to this next thing. And so becoming skillful and having the ability to do things effortlessly in competition, which is what we all want, requires being challenged and failing in practice. A lot of coaches, you'll hear coaches say, and I've definitely have said this, is perfect practice makes perfect. Okay. First of all, you always hear practice makes perfect, and then your coach might say, well, perfect practice makes perfect. But the fact is if your practice is perfect all the time, if we're throwing a bullpen that doesn't challenge you, if we're doing drills that don't challenge you, then you're going to be stuck kind of in this comfort zone, and you're never really going to stretch yourself, and you're never going to get to the point where you can do things effortlessly in competition, right? Because competition will end up being harder than what your preparation was, and then you're in trouble. So I think we need to get outside of this, mindset that practice has to be perfect, because if practice is perfect, then it's not hard enough. Okay, so that's number one. To get through easy, you got to go through hard. Um, there's more actually. Okay, so Steph Curry, we overload in our workouts so the game slows down in real life. How can we make pitching practice hard over the next 2 months? Because again, when the lights turn on in the middle of March, right? We don't want that to be the hardest thing that we've done up until that point. Okay, so things that we're going to start doing. Um, varying mound distances and targets, varying ball sizes, or even the quality of the ball. One thing that I've done that I've started doing is when we get to the bottom of the bucket and everyone gets to the bottom of the bucket and there's just like a bunch of crappy baseballs in there, I would challenge you to throw those because how often in a game does, especially in the spring when the ball's wet and, the field's wet, the ball's wet, everything's wet and cold and nasty, and the ball gets all scuffed up and you got to play with it, right? Or sometimes you get a brand new ball and that one's not great to throw either. And so, throwing those crappy baseballs at the bottom of the bucket, if you can land that thing in the zone, then you can land anything in the zone. And so those can be helpful. Heckle pins, pressure pins, where there's some sort of consequence. Those are all good. Anytime where you elevate your heart rate. So maybe we run some sprints, run 2 or 3 sprints and then we got to go execute. Okay, that forces us to learn how to slow our heart rate down. But these are all ways that we can make pitching practice harder, so that way it's easier when we get into a game. Okay, that this all makes it harder, so that way um, it's not perfect, and we got to learn how to fight through some things, fight through some adversity. Okay, next thing. Number two, I think this is also a really important one. Okay, practice with intent on things that we aren't already good at. Okay, so um, a lot of us, I think, and that I'm also this way. I think it's really important that we work on our weaknesses, right? It's really obvious, but um, I think a lot of us don't want to work on our weaknesses just because it's uncomfortable and we don't like to fail. I think there's some guys that they don't like to me. I would think that everyone loves to do pull downs. Everyone loves to do velo days because you're just like letting it eat. But not everyone likes to do velo days because they don't throw hard and they're embarrassed by their velo. Um, but you have to work on it. It's kind of like the weight room. Like some guys that don't like to lift are the weak ones because they're embarrassed by their strength. When really what it takes to be good at it is to go do the thing. So, if you're not very good at throwing changeups or off speed, just throwing your fastball all the time is not going to get the job done, right? You actually have to go work on throwing those off speed pitches. Okay, if you don't throw hard and you need to throw harder, then maybe you need to go try and throw hard and not worry so much about what the gun says or worry so much about what people might think because you're not throwing hard yet, but you have to go do the thing. And so I think it's really important that over the next couple months we continue to practice with intent with the things that we aren't already good at. There's really three different types of practice that we can have. Um, so we can have practice to learn. So this is high amounts of difficulty and failure. These are the ones that people don't like. But again, if your practice is perfect and everything's going super smooth all the time, then that's not good practice. Okay, we're learning when we are stretched outside of our comfort zone, and we're stretched outside of our comfort zone when we're working on our weaknesses, and it's not always going to look pretty. It's not always going to be clean. Um, then there's practice to perform. So this is practice to prepare for an opponent. It's a little bit less difficult, but it's still not easy. So, for example, maybe you're facing a team that can really, maybe they have a really good, I don't know, maybe they're really good at just like fouling off speed pitches or something. And so, that you're gonna have to land a fastball up or something, or maybe a better example would just be, you're facing a really good fastball hitting team, and so you're gonna have to go to your off speed in order to get outs. And so practicing to perform would be, hey, I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on my off speed this week because I know that this team is really good at hitting fastballs or sitting fastballs. And then there's practice to build confidence, which is low levels of difficulty, super easy. This would just be throwing like kind of a mindless bullpen or throwing just some fastballs at the end of your bullpen where, it's just no one's standing in, no one's on your case. But it's just like kind of a confidence builder. It might be a little easier to think of this like in terms of batting practice. Think of like your coach just throwing nice, easy beach balls from 40 feet away. That would be your practice to build confidence. And then, this is kind of what I like talking about, but information versus ego. So weak people don't like the weight room. Slow throwers don't like velo work. Strong pitchers don't like lift. They like lifting. They don't like mobility. Guys that struggle with command don't like their command, don't like doing command work. But just understand that all of this stuff is information. And when you let your ego get attacked or feel attacked because you're doing something you don't like to do, that's your problem and not anyone else's. That's just something you need to get over, right? The fact that your velo is low is just information, and that just shows us that's something that we need to work on. Okay, it's not an attack on you as a person. It just says, hey, I'm not very strong in the weight room. I just need to get stronger. Okay, and when you look at it through like a neutral mindset where you're not like you're just taking it in stride and be like, hey, yeah, this is true. I need to get stronger, and then you just go and do it, and don't worry about what people might think about it, right? And so, um, I think this part's really important. And then back to this part, I think your pregame routines need to have all three. So there needs to be a little bit of a challenge aspect. Okay, there needs to be a little bit of, hey, we're playing a team that likes to hit fastballs. We're going to throw some off speed, whatever it might be. And then finish your pregame bullpen with something that builds some confidence, right? So, but we have to practice with intent on these things. So, and we'll talk more about this pregame routines and things as we get closer to the season. Okay, this is a really big one as we get into January and February and then in season. So those of you guys that will stay with me in season, don't worry about your mechanics. Okay, that's not your job anymore. That's my job. All right. So once we start to focus on our mechanics, how we're moving on the mound, you start getting internal with your thoughts. So internal with your thoughts would be, for example, I was working with a kid today and he was super worried about his back leg. And he was so worried about his back leg that the ball was just flying everywhere. And then he was frustrated because the ball wasn't going where he wanted it to. His command was suffering. And the problem was he was focused on his back leg and not his execution. And so we need to find a way to not worry about mechanics. Let me worry about the mechanics. And my job is to give you drills, give you thoughts or things to work on or drills to work on. Let me just say it in a better way. My job is to give you drills that get the new mechanics out of you or improve your mechanics without you thinking about it. Okay, just understand that drills help create new movements without your focus on those new movements. Okay, and anytime that we're throwing now, our focus needs to be on execution. And so our pens are going to look a little different. Okay, as your training phases change, it's going to be less drill work and more execution work. And there will be some drills on there, but it'll be just the fewest amount of drills that you need to be to get right on the mound. And then after that, it's all, hey, can I hit a spot? Can I execute a pitch? But again, your job is to not worry about mechanics. My job is to worry about your mechanics and give you drills that fix them, not you. Okay, the next one, play the long game, right? We probably have all seen this before, right? But everyone thinks that success is like this picture here on the left. Okay, we think that just every day we just trend upwards. Okay, and really what it looks like is this. And this is something that even I, like at 31, almost 32 years old, have to remember sometimes. Like it doesn't just go in this nice, perfect straight line, right? We have moments where we take a step back, we take a jump forward, we take a couple steps back, we take 5 steps forward. Okay, and it's just as this jumbled mess. And so you're not going to see gains every day. One of the biggest traps I think players fall into is they hit a PR with like a velo PR, and then they think every time's going to be a velo PR, and it's just not the way that it works. Okay, you're going to go up a tick, you're going to go down a tick, you're going to go up 2 ticks, you're going to go down three, you go up four, right? So it's just the way that it is, and we have to understand that we're playing the long game. Okay, you just need to be good enough to make it to the next level, right? And to keep playing, and as long as you can keep playing, you can keep developing. And so we just have to play long enough that we can develop as much as possible. And so understand that it might take years for you, right? Braden Curtis was throwing with me the other day as a junior, right? He was throwing 80. He was like grinding out 80. He had to like absolutely grunt and scream and do all sorts of crazy things to get 80 out of his body. And that was as a junior in high school. Okay. A lot of us are juniors in high school throwing way harder than that. And then the other day, he's throwing like like the easiest 92 I've ever seen, as a senior in college. And it just takes time. Took 5 years for him to go from grinding out 80 to hitting 92, right? Now he's probably touching 94. I bet in the season he'll be 95. He might even pop a 96, right? So it's just you got to understand you're not going to see gains every day. It takes time. Okay, don't fall into the trap of seeing what other people are doing on social media. All right, everyone runs their own race, but it's going to look like this, and that's just the way that it is, and that's life. Okay, it's just going to be the same way when you're done playing baseball and your jobs and your families. So you might as well get used to it. We're all here playing the long game. And then number five, okay, I don't know. Let's find out together. So I will tell you right now, like I love pitching. I love to research pitching. I love to help guys get better at it. Um, but there's so much out there that I don't know, and there's going to be times where I don't have an answer for you, and we're just going to have to experiment, and we're going to have to try and figure it out. And so, um, especially some of you guys that meet me for the first time in person, a lot of times I ask a ton of questions. Everyone learns differently, and it just takes time sometimes for us to find the answer. And so that's why the long game is so important, right? Because sometimes it just takes time to learn about ourselves and for us to kind of learn new insights about whether it's our mechanics or a new pitch or routine. Okay, it just takes time. Just takes time. So I don't always have all the answers. We might not get answers as fast as we want, even for me. Sometimes I wish there's things that I could tell you just to give you a magic pill, and it just doesn't work that way. And so we kind of have to go through this process together. That's why I rely on a lot of communication from you guys. But it just understand that in the long run, if we have ourselves a long enough runway, we'll find the answer. And I'm going to keep learning, and you guys are going to keep learning, and we'll figure out what works for you. Okay, and then this last part, we'll iterate. Iterate just means like we'll make small changes over time to make corrections. Okay, if you look at Aroldis Chapman, his mechanics have changed throughout his career. Okay, if you look at Nolan Ryan's mechanics changed, and so um, I just think that we don't have to like it's not going to be perfect all the time. You're going to make changes. Things are going to happen, and just over time, we'll figure out what works best for you. So to recap, okay, this is our philosophy in January and February. To get to easy, you got to go through hard, right? We got to practice with intent the things that we're not good at. Okay, your job is to not worry about mechanics. That's my job. Play the long game. You're not going to see gains every day. A lot of us haven't seen gains every day this offseason, but we've seen gains. It just has taken months. Okay, for some of us, it'll take years. And then we're not gonna have all the answers all the time, but we're gonna find them out over time.